This case was hidden because it challenged everything I thought I knew. But today, I will tell you how a quiet suburban nightmare nearly slipped through the cracks of the system. For years, no one dared to speak of it. It started in a small town outside Akron, Ohio, Garden View, a place where everyone knew your name and secrets were buried under the mulch of everyday life. It was June 14th, 2011, when I first got the call. A neighbor reported hearing screams from a cul-de-sac on Maple Drive. Police arrived that night, but what they found was nothing conclusive. No signs of forced entry, no obvious injuries, just an uneasy silence and a family that refused to talk. I remember digging into the case files, the initial reports scribbled with cautious language. The Carter family, Michael, Danielle, and their teenage son, Luke. No apparent motive, no signs of violence. Yet neighbors had heard the shouting, distinct, frantic, desperate, yet somehow the police filed it away as a domestic dispute. I always wondered how they could miss the pattern. Would you have noticed this detail in the file? The local dispatch log showed no follow-up calls after that night. No patrols, no investigation. Just a quick dismissive note, noise complaint, resolved. But I knew better. I sensed there was more beneath the surface. In the weeks that followed, I tracked the family's movements through public records, school attendance, property records, DMV data. Nothing out of the ordinary at first, but then I stumbled on something odd. Michael Carter's income source, a series of unusual bank transactions, cryptocurrency exchanges, shadow clinics in nearby towns, ghost payments. I questioned myself. Was this a coincidence? Or was there a shadow operation operating underneath their quiet veneer? The family's public image was pristine. Danielle was a stay-at-home mom, active in PTA, Michael, a local businessman. But behind closed doors, I found evidence of secret meetings, encrypted messages. I felt the weight of a lie pressing down on me. One evening, I accessed the local sheriff's records, something I wasn't supposed to do. I found a sealed case file, number 2011-1-05678, that had been quietly flagged under review. When I requested it through FOIA, I was stonewalled. The records vanished from the digital archive overnight. Suddenly, the silence was deafening. Why was this case being hidden? What were they trying to cover up? I questioned the family's silence. Did they know what was happening? Did they have something to lose? I kept digging, but every lead I uncovered was met with unspoken resistance. Then came betrayal. A confidential informant, someone I had trusted, told me the police had been pressured, unofficial pressure, to keep the Carter case quiet. They feared exposing a network that extended beyond this family, possibly involving local officials. I wondered, was this a simple domestic dispute or something darker? In the shadows of the investigation, I discovered a pattern of similar incidents in neighboring towns. Unsolved calls, whispering neighbors, officials who looked the other way. It felt like a web, tightening around something dangerous. And then, the fracture. Someone high up within the sheriff's department decided to pull the plug. They ordered records sealed, witnesses silenced, and the case quietly closed. But I kept a copy of the original reports. I knew this wasn't over. In the end, the Carters vanished from the records. Their house was sold and the neighborhood moved on, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I saw the cracks in the official story. I knew their silence meant fear. Fear of what the truth might reveal. Would you have believed their public calm knowing what I now suspect? What looks most suspicious to you in this story? Is it the neighbors' quiet screams, the missing files, or the shadowy transactions? Why do you think this was hidden for so long? If this case were investigated today, how do you think it would end? Would the truth finally come out, or would the system continue to protect its own? I wonder sometimes if the real story is still buried deep beneath the surface. This file was never meant to be released, but I've seen too much. Enough to know that darkness often hides behind the quietest facades. If you've listened this far, you're searching for the truth. Subscribe. I'll show you the next case. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still here. And this is only one episode. Subscribe so I can show you the next. Every day, I'll post a real case from my archive. Investigations I solved that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment. It really helps this channel. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. This case was hidden because it exposed a level of corruption that few wanted to confront. But today, I will tell you how the quiet suburban facade cracked open, revealing a tangled web of secrets that threatened to destroy everything. For years, no one dared to speak of it. After the Carter family disappeared from public view, I kept digging. I revisited the neighborhood, cross-referenced every address, every license plate, every contact I could find. Nothing seemed out of place, at first, but I knew better than to trust appearances. Beneath the calm surface, I sensed the undercurrent of something far darker. One night, I managed to access a private server, an untraceable endpoint linked to local law enforcement, I suspect. Hidden in the logs was a strange pattern of encrypted messages, coded exchanges between officers, lawyers, and shadow figures. I recognized the signs of a cover-up, but I was only seeing fragments. Still, I kept careful notes. The real breakthrough came when I obtained a copy of the police radio recordings from that night in 2011. I played the tapes again and again, listening for inconsistencies. I heard the neighbors' screams clearly, yet the dispatchers' voices were oddly detached, almost dismissive. But what caught my attention was a brief, muffled exchange between officers. "Stand down. The family's instructions are clear." Would you have noticed this detail? It's subtle, almost subliminal, but it hints at orders coming from higher up, something I couldn't ignore. I wondered, what were they so afraid of? Why silence the witnesses? I also found an unmarked file in a federal database, an intelligence report, oddly labeled Operation Red Moon. It contained references to a clandestine operation involving local officials, shadow clinics, and illegal activities masked as legitimate health services. I questioned whether the Carter family was involved, or perhaps victims of a larger scheme. But here's the troubling part. Family members who knew too much started disappearing from the picture. An aunt, a cousin, even a neighbor who had once spoken freely about the screams, all of them suddenly silent, relocated, or under pressure. Did someone threaten them? Or worse, did they vanish? The silence around it grew deafening. And then I uncovered a series of bank transactions, not just from Michael Carter, but from other families in similar situations. Large sums sent through untraceable crypto wallets, paid to shell companies registered in obscure states. It looked like a form of hush money, payoffs to keep quiet about what was happening behind the scenes. The more I pieced together, the clearer it became. There was an elaborate operation operating in the shadows, one that involved manipulating families, silencing witnesses, and hiding crimes under layers of false fronts. But why? What was the end game? A question gnawed at me. If the police and officials were involved, how deep did it go? Were they protecting something more than just reputations? Were they guarding a secret so dangerous that revealing it could topple entire local power structures? And then, the betrayal. I was approached by a confidential source, someone I had trusted in law enforcement, who warned me to back off. "You don't want to dig too deep," they said. "Some things are better left undiscovered." That's when I realized how far the corruption stretched. It wasn't just about covering up a family's screams. It was about protecting a network that ran through the town's very core. But I couldn't stop. Something told me the truth was still out there, buried beneath the lies. I kept searching for the missing pieces. Who ordered the silence? And why? Who was really pulling the strings? And then I found a sealed court record. Case number 2011CV08912. An injunction filed by a shadowed attorney, blocking any further investigation into the Carter family's case. It was signed by a judge who, as I later discovered, had ties to the same shadow network. I wondered, how many other cases had been quietly buried like this? Why did the system betray those neighbors, those families? What had they uncovered that made it impossible for the truth to see the light? Were the screams just the surface of something even more sinister? If this investigation were reopened today, I believe it would expose a sprawling operation, one that exploited fear, silence, and the law itself. But the question remains, how deep does the rabbit hole go? Who else is still in the dark, trusting that their secrets are safe? This file was never meant to be released, but I've seen enough to know that power and corruption walk hand in hand, cloaked in silence. If you've listened this far, you're searching for the truth. Subscribe, I'll show you the next case. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still here. And this is only one episode. Subscribe so I can show you the next. Every day I'll post a real case from my archive. Investigations I solved that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. It really helps this channel. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. This case was hidden because it revealed a level of deception so systemic it threatened to unravel entire communities. But today, I will tell you how the truth finally emerged from the shadows, how the silence was broken, and what was left behind. For years, no one dared to speak of it. After I uncovered the sealed court documents and the encrypted communications, I knew I was onto something bigger. I revisited every piece of evidence, cross-checked those shadowed transactions, analyzed the patterns of disappearance, and tried to connect the dots that others refused to see. And then I found a lead, an anonymous tip from someone claiming to have been part of the operation. The message was simple. They're watching. Trust no one. Would you have trusted that tip? I hesitated at first, but something in the tone told me it was real. I traced the IP address, an untraceable burn device linked to a burner phone registered to a fake identity. The message pointed to a location, a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio. On a cold morning in early September 2012, I made the journey. The place was abandoned, but I had a gut feeling that whatever was inside had connections to everything I'd uncovered. The silence, the disappearances, the corruption. I slipped inside, careful and quiet. In the dim light, I found a hidden room, screens flickering with surveillance footage, files stacked in neat piles, and a map with pins marking dozens of locations across Ohio, Texas, and California. There was a single name scrawled on a notepad: Operation Red Moon, Phase 2. I realized the operation was ongoing. They had only been biding their time, waiting for the right moment to expand their reach. And then I saw it. Video footage on one of the screens. It showed a family, not unlike the Carters, being taken into a facility under heavy guard. Their faces were blurred, but the context was clear. These families were being held, manipulated, used as leverage. I knew I was witnessing something I was never supposed to see. Did you notice the pattern? The families silenced, relocated, and replaced with lookalikes, actors maybe, who continued living their lives as if nothing was wrong. It was a masterclass in deception, a way to erase entire families from history. I knew I needed proof to expose this, but I also knew I was risking everything. If they caught me, I'd disappear. Or worse. I discreetly took photos, copied files onto a secure drive, and prepared to leave. As I did, I heard footsteps. Someone had entered the warehouse. I froze, heart pounding. I knew I'd been discovered. I managed to slip out just in time. The evidence I gathered was enough to blow the case wide open if I could get it to the right authorities. But I also knew that once I went public, I would be hunted. The operation was deeply embedded, with ties that reached into local government, law enforcement, even the courts. Would you believe how extensive this network was? It wasn't just a few families. This was a systematic operation, a shadow industry built on secrecy and fear. They'd replaced witnesses, manipulated legal systems, and silenced anyone who tried to blow the whistle. I contacted a trusted journalist, someone I knew had integrity, and handed over the evidence. But I also warned them, be careful. The people behind this wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who got too close. And then the attacks started. Threatening messages, anonymous calls, even a break-in at my house. I realized I was no longer working in the shadows. I was now a target. The authorities I initially approached refused to act, citing insufficient evidence or privacy concerns. I knew that was a lie. The system was complicit. The only way forward was to release what I had, even if it meant risking everything. So I did. I leaked the files, the videos, the maps. I knew it would cause a stir, public outrage, investigations, maybe even arrests, but I also knew they would come after me now. I was marked. And yet, despite the attempts to silence me, the story spread. Whistleblowers came forward, local journalists dug into the records, and the truth finally started to surface. But the core question still lingers. How many families were lost in this web of lies? How many lives were erased to keep this operation hidden? If this investigation were reopened today, I believe it would expose a clandestine empire, one built on fear, silence, and ruthless control. But the deeper I look, the more I realize the real power lies in the cover-up. This file was never meant to be released, but I've seen enough. Enough to know that some truths are dangerous to reveal. If you've listened this far, you're searching for the truth. Subscribe. I'll show you the next case. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still here. And this is only one episode. Subscribe so I can show you the next. Every day, I'll post a real case from my archive. Investigations I solve that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment. It really helps this channel. Stay safe. See you tomorrow. This case was hidden because it revealed the extent to which lies can be woven into the fabric of a community. making the truth almost impossible to see. But today, I will tell you how the pieces finally came together, how the silence cracked, and what shadows still linger. For years, no one dared to speak of it. After I left the warehouse that cold September day, I knew I had struck a nerve. The evidence I'd gathered was enough to shake the foundations of that corrupt network. If only I could get it to the right people. But I also knew that the deeper they were embedded, the more dangerous it became to expose them. I reached out to an independent journalist, someone with a reputation for digging into the unseen. I handed over the files in a sealed envelope, warning them, "This is bigger than you think. Be careful." I could feel the weight of the secrets pressing down even as I walked away. Within days, the story broke, an explosive report revealing a clandestine operation that spanned multiple states. Families replaced, witnesses silenced, and a web of corruption woven into the very institutions meant to protect us. The public was stunned, but I knew the real battle was just beginning. Because the operation had layers I hadn't yet fully uncovered. I received a tip from a whistleblower who claimed there was a hidden archive, an underground vault where the most sensitive documents were stored, concealed from all eyes. They called it the Vault of Shadows. I found myself back in Cleveland searching for that secret vault. It took weeks, an intricate puzzle of coded maps and underground tunnels. But eventually, I located a concealed door beneath an abandoned factory. Inside, I found a room filled with sealed boxes, stacks of photographs and files, evidence of families, victims, and operations so deeply hidden that even the authorities seemed to have forgotten them. What I saw chilled me. Files labeled with names, dates, and coded references, each one representing a life erased, a story silenced. The vault was a graveyard of truths. I realized then, this was not just about one family or one town. It was a systematic effort, an entire operation designed to manipulate, control, and eliminate dissent. Did you notice how carefully they planned this? The disappearances, the fake identities, the staged lives. It was all meticulously orchestrated, like a puppet show with real people's lives as the casualties. And the worst part? The system knew. The officials, the judges, the law enforcement, they all played their parts in maintaining the illusion. I questioned how they managed to keep it hidden for so long. The answer: fear. Fear of exposure, fear of losing their grip on power. They used intimidation, blackmail, and silence to keep everyone in line. The families who tried to speak out were crushed beneath a wave of official pressure and threats. Many simply vanished from the records, their stories buried forever. Would you believe how many people were involved? It stretched across jurisdictions, local, state, federal. It was a network so vast, so deeply rooted, that exposing it risked your life. I knew I was only a small piece in a much larger puzzle. But I couldn't stop. I made copies of the most damning evidence and prepared to go public again. But I also knew I had to be careful. These people didn't just threaten, they eliminated. I had to move quietly, protect my sources, and ensure this information reached the right hands, if it still could. Then came the retaliation. My phone was tapped, my emails hacked. I started receiving anonymous warnings. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. I wondered how many others had tried and failed. How many had been silenced before they even got close. Finally, I decided to go underground. I leaked what I could to trusted outlets, but I also disappeared from the grid for a while. I knew I was being watched, but I also knew that the truth needed to be known, no matter the cost. And the story didn't end there. The public outrage grew, investigations reopened, and some officials were forced to testify. But the core question remains: how many more families are out there, still silenced, still hidden? How many secrets do they still guard behind locked doors? If this investigation were to be reopened today, I believe it would crack open the entire operation, exposing the puppet masters pulling the strings. But I also wonder how many more vaults like this exist, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be found. This file was never meant to be released, but I've seen enough. Enough to know that the darkness is always lurking just beneath the surface. If you've listened this far, you're searching for the truth. Subscribe. I'll show you the next case. These files rarely survive to the end. Subscribe while this one is still here. And this is only one episode. Subscribe so I can show you the next. Every day, I'll post a real case from my archive, investigations I solved that still unsettle me. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment. It really helps this channel. Stay safe. See you tomorrow.